I got the walk, there's a longboard walk. I know the talk, the longboard talk.
Hi, and welcome to episode 26 of Oz Longboarding. So you have a bit of a different host tonight, me. And this week we have a very special guest and a really good friend of mine, Lucy Small. But first, we're going to go around the coast and see what's been happening each week in everyone's region. So let's start on another planet, basically in WA with Weeksy. How's it going over there?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Kirra. So it is like another planet over here at the moment. It's sort of good to hear that the rest of the East Coast is starting to get normal. We've had it announced today that everyone except people from Melbourne and Sydney will be able to travel to Western Australia without having to quarantine or go through any of that rubbish. Interestingly, the only cases we have live in our whole state are people in hotel quarantine who've come from other places. So yeah, that'd be interesting to see how that rolls out. I'm like Matt, just off camera before we came live. Matt said he's frothing to get to Tullamarine, and as I've said week after week, Nath, I can't wait to get across and visit you. But this week I've been busy, had my hands dirty. Matty Chinovsky's inspired me. I've been rust removing out of a little trailer I bought, so that hopefully it'll turn out all right. But I haven't even seen the ocean, so there's been some waves. But a mate of mine in town here, Fridgie Pete, the local air conditioning guy, he checks the surf every morning and he said it's a bit wonky still, so we're waiting for it to tidy itself up. But hopefully the next couple of days, I'll be able to get down there into the water.
Epic. And it definitely makes it feel better if you're working hard that there's not the best waves ever, for sure. Excellent. So coming back to the East Coast, Nathan down in Vic, how's it going down there? Are you guys nearly out of lockdown?
Yeah, like Weeks just saying, I've been working really hard, just getting tubed in the pool. Not really. It's been really nice. We've had some awesome news with the easing of restrictions. So yeah, we can go to New South Wales in 2 weeks, and the Ring of Steel has been removed from Melbourne, so it's a lot more busy down home in Torquay with all the Melburnians coming down. But yeah, we've had really nice weather. The waves have been pretty good. Went down south today. It was really tiny here, so I went down towards Joanna, if you guys are familiar with down there, and got some fun waves. So yeah, it's been really nice.
Sounds good. That's good to hear you guys getting good weather.
Yeah, beautiful.
Can I just jump in with a quick question for Nathan as well? I've noticed this is the first time you haven't had a background behind you, mate. Is that because if you hadn't won the grand final, you wouldn't want us to see the wall behind you?
Yeah, it's all around here at the moment. But I thought my hairline was looking a bit shit today, so I thought I better actually, I'm not even protecting it. This is actually bad. Maybe I should put a background on. It's looking a bit bad.
You got a snapback?
Yeah, maybe.
All right, moving up the coast, Maddie, how are you going? What's happening further north there?
Similar to Weeksy, just been knuckling down in the Sydney workwear chic, so donning the high vis and a pair of Nikes and King G's. Not quite, actually Vans and McTavish, but you know, that reference will do. We're just talking about that off air. That, yeah, definitely jumping in the water. It's cold. Water's cold. It's freezing. It's northeast wind swell mixed with some south swells. You're getting some weird currents. So it's actually really freezing at the moment. Everyone I know, and that's not exaggeration, every surfer I know who surf right through winter, all our wetsuits are all, it's almost like we've done 2 seasons in 1 year because it was so good. And we surf like non-stop from May all the way through. We've just done miles and miles in our wetsuits, and they've just been flogged out. So everyone's got holes or, you know, rock scratches in their suits. It's pretty funny. But yeah, we're wearing steamers in November, which is wild. Maybe Lucy can fill us in a little bit on the, even though she doesn't necessarily deal with the environment, I'm sure she's got a couple of opinions there. But we'll talk about that later. Surf-wise, variable swell and wind. So if you know where to go, you will get waves. I'm a big firm believer that Sydney's got some of the best waves in the world based on variety. I stand by that. And daylight savings, how amazing is it in Sydney anyway? Because we're knocking off work at 6 or 7 and able to go catch a wave, you know, still for an hour surf in the afternoon. So life is good coming into Christmas. And that rust repair and surf car show we did back in September, since then, so many, we were all talking about what people do with their cars and, you know, what's going to happen, COVID and not traveling. We've seen an overwhelming increase in people maintaining and, you know, decking out their vans and their four-wheel drives, purchasing new cars. It's crazy. The automotive industry for the aftermarket stuff's going wild, and Weeksy's setting up his business catering for a portion of that. But yeah, it's crazy. So many kids and ladies, families jumping in full drives, wanting roof racks, rust repairs. You know, they're going to go full driving. So it's cool. Everyone's getting active and getting excited about finally able to leave their little 5K radius.
Sounds good. I might have to be in the market for a four-wheel drive soon too. I wish we had daylight savings up here because that would be excellent. So if Queensland could get on to that whole situation, then we'd be on a similar time zone in the East Coast. That'd be great. In Queensland, not that much swell up here this week. A few little waves around at the points and that, but nothing too special. But I'm super excited to introduce my very, very good friend, Lucy Small, who I've had the privilege of traveling with last year on the World Longboard Tour. And she is an amazing wordsmith, an aspiring academic in peace and conflict studies and interest in gender and armed violence, freelance surf journalist for WSL, writes for the Pacific Longboarder, travels here between South Africa and also Sydney. Byron grew up in WA. She's been all over the world. So welcome, Lucy. We're so stoked to have you on. How's it been where you are?
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Thanks, Kirra. Such a nice intro. Yeah, I've had an interesting winter, I would say, and got away last week. Went up north, escaped to the city, and probably had the best surf that I've had all year, which was amazing. Surfed by myself, which is pretty rare these days, and yeah, hung out in Crescent for a few days. But otherwise, my life of surfing in Sydney, Maddie, is just drive 25 minutes to the beach, get there. It's huge. I've driven 25 minutes, so I've got to paddle out, get smashed. Remember that my park's up. Go home.
And you've messaged me 2 hours before, and I've been and gone, or you know, we've overlapped 2 hours on the wrong side of the tide.
Yeah, I haven't quite found my rhythm the last few months around here, but still have had some really sick sessions. I've had a lot of swell and surfed on last Friday before the Surf Aid Cup, which was really fun. Also solid. Paddled out, got smashed, got one wave.
I saw a photo of that wave.
Got a photo up, went in.
Which team did you surf it with?
7 Miles Coffee.
Oh, cool. Unreal.
Yeah, it was awesome. We were the only, there was our team, we had 2 girls, and there was one other team with a girl, and there was no other girls in the whole event. And
no longboarders, really, hey?
Well, I was too scared to take a log out. It was big and low tide, and but
Where was the comp at, Lucy?
Sorry?
Where was the comp held?
At North Dane at Manly. Yeah.
Surf Aid. So that's Doug Lee. Was Doug there?
Yeah.
He's such a ripper guy.
Yeah. So it was it's a teams event. It was really fun. It was an awesome day. I think they raised like 160 grand. It was pretty amazing effort. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's really awesome. So Luce, I guess what mainly got you into surfing? Because obviously your career now is pretty much based around surfing, apart from your studies and where you're going with that, which I presume is heading towards the surfing route eventually as well. So you've told me a little bit. But what first got you into surfing, and where did you grow up surfing?
So I grew up deep south WA, like 5 hours drive south Perth. Really small town called Denmark, which
Ding, 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 ding.
which the waves suck there. Don't go there.
Yeah, it's a horrible place. No,
Sharky, heavy locals, crowded.
that Mike Ninebell character, he's hardcore.
Yeah, so Mike Ninebell is actually local legend down there who, well, not originally from there, but been there a long time and kind of founded the surf school, the only surf school in town. And so I started when I was like 12 with him. And and then just kind of, I'm like, I guess my personality is very obsessive. So as soon as I started, I just immediately just didn't stop. So yeah, just my parents lived pretty close to the beach. I used to skip school and ride my bike down, and had a few of my girlfriends that we'd just frothed out for our whole teenage years, living the kind of, I guess, like that kind of area. There's not a lot going on, so it's a lot of opportunity to spend time at the beach, and yeah, there's not a lot that can take you away from it. So yeah, that was kind of how I began.
How important do you think longboarding was in those early days? Because for those who don't know, Denmark is a lot further south than, say, Margaret River, which everyone's familiar with. And it's a beautiful area, by the way. It really is amazing. And yeah, there's never any waves, but apart from that, it's all right. Each year, one of our state rounds, we have 3 state rounds in WA to choose the team for national titles. And one of those state rounds is in Denmark. And when Lucy first started, we had Georgia Young, Claire Finnecane, some of the WA girls doing amazingly well on the Australian side as well as on the world tour. And people like Emiliana Campbell, other Denmark locals, all of a sudden come out of the woodwork. And then there was yourself and a couple of other Denmark ladies all of a sudden on the state longboard tour. Was the longboarding important, or were you just already surfing and going in the state round was an opportunity to go in a comp that you otherwise wouldn't have?
I think like definitely at that, like by the time that I had started to kind of register like what the state round was and what those state comps were, I was already pretty into longboarding at that stage. Like we didn't have Denmark, the surf culture around Denmark is very much like it's like slab, like it's like toe surfing. And so the kind of like the people that we had to look up to like in terms of surfing were guys that are like towing the ride, like people that are pioneering that coastline. And so we really had like no exposure to any longboard culture or anything. So we were just watching surf flicks like One California Day and Lines of Palm and Sprout. That was all we had to go off. And Pacific Longboarder magazine. And then yeah, so like we sort of developed this little like cluster of teenagers that we were really longboarding, and then I remember the first time I kind of realized the Denmark comp was on, the state round was on, was I remember I was free surfing out there and the waves looked really good in the comp area and there was music playing and it was like a whole vibe going on. And I was like, what is that? I want to do that. And so then like I entered the following year, like the first event, I think I was like 16, the first event of the series in Yallingup at Main Break. And I remember like pulling up there with one of my friends and we had never surfed anywhere but Denmark. And so getting there and seeing Yallingup Main Break and being like, whoa, that's what good waves are.
How old are you at this time, Lucy? Were you driving or were you with?
I was 16. So
16.
I was with my friend Asher, who was kind of like my like real core surf buddy growing up. And then we went with like a few of the other crew from Denmark that were already doing the events. And there's like the caravan park right there at Yallingup. And so, yeah, I guess then like having like you mentioned Claire Finnecane and Georgia Young and Jade Foster as well was around at that time. Sort of seeing them like shredding was amazing because we had never really seen like really good women surfers before, or women longboarders especially. And so they were like hugely influential at that time because they were obviously really interested in us, interested in me, to see like somebody young coming in and
ready to lead you astray a little, maybe.
They definitely loved having like some groms around. But it was awesome to kind of like Claire, that was at a time that Claire I think had won like 5 Aussie titles in a row or something. Like she was absolutely shredding and very like really kind and caring to us, and like really encouraged us to like encouraged me to like get more into competing and that type of thing.
Do you think that your, I suppose you just explained your background of how you found longboarding and how you got into it. Do you think, I guess, your upbringing made you want to be a part of longboard culture so much? So when you finally felt, well, I don't know, do you feel a part of longboarding now? And did those feelings at the beginning motivate you to who you are now? Is in being so passionate with your writing and your perspectives surrounding surfing in general?
I don't know if it was like, I think it was a mix. It's definitely a mixture of, I guess, like my kind of personality and my conditioning growing up and those kind of influences. But I've always had this like feeling of wanting to like elevate the underdog, and I guess that like longboarding is so often kind of pushed to the periphery or treated as shortboarding's poor cousin, and that always really made me feel like pretty not annoyed, but like eager to kind of like celebrate and expose people to the like amazing the amazing sport that and lifestyle that longboarding is. And it is also hugely about community. Like I've always felt that it's this global, really close, really quite small, close community that you can kind of tap in and out of wherever you are in the world, which is like, I guess that's motivating to keep going and continue, being engaged with it and being involved.
And I want to mention about...
Sorry, Matt, I'm just going to cut in just briefly. Sorry, mate, but Paul Fleming and Martin Coleman both want to know if you just change your shirt.
Yes. The stripes were playing. I had a stripy shirt on, and the stripes were like making me dizzy. So I went up. You know, I don't. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Carry on.
That's all right. It's wearing all the high vis today. I'm a bit sunburnt too. It's reflecting. You know, all the reflecting. Yeah, we'll get into board choice, you know, shortly, because it's obviously unique where you've grown up and where you've moved to and the places you've surfed and live now. But I can actually relate, but I came into longboarding a fair bit earlier than you did. But the underdog thing, I think, reigns supreme among a lot of people who grew up in areas that weren't necessarily, longboard friendly. And that's pretty much everywhere except for Southern California and Noosa. Everywhere in the 90s and 2000s wasn't exactly longboard friendly. A lot of the Groms these days thankfully don't have to put up with why do you ride that thing? Because that was really frustrating when I was growing up. Guys like Harley, Ingleby and Dame Pioli would have copped it, but they would just go, I can surf it better than you, give me a shortboard. And, that's how they would get a dance around that issue. But in terms of like traditional longboarding, it feels like it's been an uphill battle, like climbing a ladder, then it just keeps sinking until the last couple of years, and you've come into it at the perfect time. And I've really enjoyed reading your analysis and your perspectives surrounding that. And we've had some great discussions in the past too. At Noosa in particular, maybe we've had a few beverages. You might have had a few cruises. And
was that on a park bench about 8 years ago?
Yeah, let's keep it PG because I think it was pretty fiery on both sides. I was trying to represent something and you were trying to represent something. But at the end of the day, we're both very passionate, and I saw your passion with longboarding then, and that stood out to me. So it's something that you've carried right through. And so tell us about your board choice. Like, how did you end up to where you are now and your perspectives?
Yeah, so I guess like growing up in Denmark, I didn't know anything about traditional longboarding. That like I was watching clips that were like traditional longboarding, but they didn't register with me that there was any difference between like the 2+1 that I was riding and whatever Alex Nost was riding at that time. And I guess like also that was in a period where there was a lot of kind of high performance surf vids coming out. Cassia Meta was still riding a 2+1 at that time, I think, and so that was I obviously started off with that kind of idea and perception of what good surfing was. But I guess I've always kind of advocated for or stood by the idea that, like, in my mind, surfing is for me. So I'm surfing for myself. I'm not surfing for the people on the shore. So I don't care if what I'm doing looks shit because I'm not watching myself. And so as time has gone by, I've kind of, I guess, moved more into like traditional longboarding, but that has also coincided with taking up shortboarding too. So like probably through like traveling over the last few years, it's like not logistically possible to drag a 9-foot slog around with you everywhere. So kind of,
it's quite entertaining though.
yeah, like it's good. It's good for your negotiation skills. But so yeah, really like has just been kind of forced to shortboard, and which has been really fun. It's added a whole new dimension to my surfing, but having that skill has allowed me to ride heavier boards that I don't have to think about, like, well, if it's hollow and like and solid, am I going to paddle out on my 9.6? I know that some people would do that, but I'm too scared. And I can take shortboard out. So that's kind of opened up that I could have really been able to explore traditional longboarding probably over the last kind of probably 5 years. And now I'm pretty dedicated to a wide tail, inappropriate outline for Sydney straight-handers.
Yeah, the right board for the right conditions is hopefully your aim.
Yeah.
I don't know where you keep finding these straight-handers, Lucy. We will have to surf because of course,
I think it just depends how quick you are.
Bondi and South Corner Manly are the only good places in Sydney for everyone that knows that. Manly and Bondi, that's pretty much not nowhere else. Maroubra is a great one. Say good day to the boys. Like do their little handshake. But yeah, apart from Sydney and Maroubra and Manly, South Corner, that's where you go.
So, Luce, apart from straight-handers in New South Wales, where else have you surfed around the world?
Oh, so many places.
It's only a 1 hour show, Kirra.
Sorry.
Lucy, tell us the places in the world you haven't surfed. That'll probably get it.
Okay, I'll tell you
your favourites.
I'll tell you the most unexpected places that I've surfed.
Okay.
So probably the weirdest place that I've been on a surf trip was Bangladesh. Surfed the Bay of Bengal onshore wet season slot. That was definitely an ear infection or two involved in that one.
You lose some couple of kilos?
Yeah, that was sweaty, and we had to wear like culturally appropriate attire, which means not even an ankle on show. That was really warm. But earlier this year I went to Algeria as well, which was surfing in the Mediterranean. The first time I surfed in the Med. Apparently I was the first ever foreign woman to surf Algeria, so that was quite cool. Actually surprisingly good there. I expected it to be way worse than it was.
How much fun was that? So that's traveling with Sam Bleakley, making his video series. Was that as much fun as what it seems like it would have been?
Yeah, it was awesome. I loved it. It was one of the funnest trips I've ever done. Like, it was a lot of work in terms of like getting up early and shooting all day, but like it was a really cool atmosphere. There was just 4 of us on the trip with like a couple of local crew. Like we was completely silly the whole time, and really amazing to meet Diha, who is Algeria's only woman surfer. She's same age as me. Kind of, it was really like cool interaction with her, and to like get to know her mindset and what kind of drive has like driven her to sort of be on this vanguard of promoting surfing in Algeria, which was really, really amazing opportunity.
And for those of you who haven't watched it, that everyone can find that on the WSL website under Brilliant Corners. Is that right?
Yeah, Brilliant Corners. Yep. If you Google Brilliant Corners Algeria, it'll come up.
Perfect. So if you haven't checked it out, go watch it.
And I'm pretty proud to say that Sam Bleakley is on our UK Huey's Choice Surf Wax team as well, Kirra. So
Oh, excellent.
yeah,
Yes.
he keeps hashtagging us in everything, and it's like, oh, it's like I know him or something. But
That's
He's
awesome.
awesome.
It was so awesome to travel with Sam. Like, he really is such a great, he's just such a great person to spend time with. He's experienced a lot, and very sensitive and very perceptive. And we're like stuck in the middle of the, stranded in the middle of the Algerian desert, waiting for 4 hours for a police escort. And Sam's like FaceTimes his 5-year-old son just to make him tell us a joke.
Lucy, I was going to ask a bit about like where your love for writings come from. Obviously, as I'm a budding sort of sports journalist as well, and I've read a lot of your stuff, and really, yeah, I think you're an amazing writer. So I was just interested to see where that sort of come from, and yeah, where that's taken you.
I guess it's just kind of come from like, it's like started off when I was a kid, I guess, just wanting to tell stories and loving language. And but then I studied journalism at uni. I did my undergrad and majored in journalism, but I never had an inkling to pursue news or that kind of thing, because I didn't find it like as creative enough. News is very like hard facts, and that's kind of what journalism course leads towards. But in that course, there was kind of two things that happened during that time. Was that I had to do an internship, and I did my internship at Surfing World magazine. So I was there for a couple of months when it was a very different publication to what it is now. But that was a really cool experience. I got to interview a lot of really cool people, and I was living in Torquay during that time. So I did my studies in Geelong, and my very first assignment that I had to do was to profile somebody, so write an editorial profile. And someone who knew someone or whatever put me in touch with Wayne Lynch, and so I profiled Wayne Lynch. I went to his house and I interviewed him. It was the first interview I'd ever done, and it was when he was filming his movie. So he was like, I'll agree to do it, but you can't publish this because like it's all coming out in a movie. And it was the most amazing experience. I'll never forget that. Like he like pulled up at his house, went inside, and he just starts ranting about carbon credits. And I was like, okay, I don't really know how to like start my how to start the interview, but all right, I'll just listen to this. And then he just reminisced on his life for so long, and I was just sitting there like, oh my gosh, telling me about when he was a conscientious objector and like hiding out down past Apollo Bay and fleeing the country to Morocco. And then one of his mates came over, and then they started like going into this huge long chat about like life back in the day. And I just left that situation and thought, this is the most amazing thing that you can do, like to interview people. You just
Wayne, though, in particular, the stuff you heard, he is and he was known in the height of his surfing career as a mysterious person that no one really knew much about. And he had this when he came onto the scene, it was so vicious and his attack was so like raw, but no one could get an insight into the reasoning and the persona behind the attack. And you were probably one of the few people to do it.
I'm like 19, a journalism student, just like, okay, well,
incredible.
I can't even remember what I asked him, but it went amazing. Like it went really well. Like he was so forthcoming and like so nice. I was really surprised because a lot of people had kind of said like, oh, he's a bit like not like he's maybe a bit hard to talk to or something like that. And I didn't find him like that at all. It was really awesome. And then when I was at Surfing World, probably like a year later, they wanted an interview with Wayne Lynch, and I was like, funnily enough, they were like, we don't know how to get in contact with him, and like, I don't know, he doesn't really do interviews. And I was like, weirdly, I think I can do it. So then I interviewed him again.
So good.
But this time you knew he was a surfer.
Yeah, by this time When they were like, we want an interview with Wayne Lynch, I was like, Wayne who?
The guy who bailed from, getting, from conscription, signing up for the war, and went hiding down south, and you're like, oh, that guy's a surfer. Wow. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Wow. I thought he was just an activist.
Yeah.
So that was really awesome. And then being like in surfing world, in that environment, was really cool. Like I think so many parts of the surf industry are very male dominated, and I think being very young and being in that office environment, at times I felt a bit like out of my depth, maybe. But I learned so much, and just about like how to interview, how to write, what the editorial process is, what editors expect or want. Vaughan Blakey was the editor then, and he was really awesome. But also at the time, John Brazen from Pacific Longboarder magazine, he commissioned my first ever feature story, which was a profile of Chelsea Williams, and it was right before she won her world title. So that was awesome, because then she did win her world title right after, and that.
Did you do a follow up?
Huh?
Did you do a follow up with Chelsea after she won, like to tie off the story?
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
That was really cool, and I guess like that was the start of kind of realizing the value and the opportunity of being able to talk to people in that way, which I think, like, I love writing and I love that storytelling part, but I always feel like the actual interview part is my favorite bit, because over the years I've sort of gained this library of people's lives and information, and like, like learning about like the nuances of what people get excited about, and how they explain themselves, and all those things has just been has been the coolest element of it. And so that is kind of, it's a huge privilege to then decide what in someone's life, out of everything that they've told me, is then worthy of going down on the page.
That's a big responsibility. But that's pressure. I've interviewed hundreds of people, Lucy, as you know, through the TV show and all the rest of it. But I've had a couple of awkward times where you've asked what I thought was a perfectly innocent question, and it's kind of gone flop in my face. You've been able to interview some amazing people. I've recently seen you've done an interview with Carney and my favourite Brazilian female surfer, world champ, soon to be. But have you ever had a time like that where you've gone in there with high expectations, thinking it's going to be amazing, and either the interview as a whole flopped, situation fell apart, or you've asked a question and there's just been that, oh, shouldn't have gone there?
I've never had any like particularly awkward moments. Like, I think I still get really nervous right before an interview for that reason, that I'm like, oh my God, what if they don't like my questions? Or like, what if it's going to be awkward? And like lately I've been interviewing quite a few like quite young people, so like teenagers, who I guess as you get older, it becomes easier to explain yourself, or like you believe in your opinion, so you're not afraid to say them. But when you're 16, like it's maybe don't know what to say, and so it can sometimes be a little. It's fun. Like I still really like it, because I like listening to like how 16-year-olds understand things and what they find important to bring up. But it's definitely a little bit more awkward.
Flashback to 16-year-old Lucy, I can say you made quite an impact at that first contest at Yelling Up. You arrived with a bang into a world that included Rachel Dawes, so that's something to be proud of.
How'd you go in that contest? What was the result of that Yelling Up contest?
Oh, I probably came last.
I think you got fifth. I think you got fifth, if I remember it, Lucy. And it was like a couple of people said, "Oh, there's one to watch."
Yeah, well, a few years later, I beat Chelsea at Yelling Up. That was my biggest thing I ever did at Yelling Up. I had a heat against Chelsea Williams and I beat her. I remember that.
So my question was going to be that. So that let's flash back a couple of years before that. So you hadn't had your taste of competition. You're 14-year-old Lucy Small down in Denmark now, learning banjo in your spare time. And did you ever think that you would be flying around the world, having videos made, talking to the who's who of your chosen sport, being, internet commentary in the some of the biggest contests in the world? Did you ever think that, was that a goal, or is it just sort of, you just found yourself here?
I think when I was 14, I still wanted to be an astronaut. I did always dream of I don't know, I guess doing what I'm doing now. But it seemed so far away at that time. Like, it seemed like something that I would never attain. Like, to ever imagine having my work published in any of these magazines, or like that the WSL would ever want to like put out anything that I had to say. I would never have imagined, like, I would have wished for it. I would definitely have wished for it, but I never would have thought that it was attainable to reach that point. And even like, like watching surf videos and stuff, to think that I would ever be surfing on the world tour, I never would have thought that.
Surfing on the world tour and also commentating is post-heat interviews. How did you find that this year?
I think a highlight was when I called Ben Skinner's Surfing Vanilla on live. That was
Whoops.
Sorry, Ben.
Wow, that's wild.
Kind of got vanilla complexion though.
I was going to say smooth, and I looked at his face and it was very pale. Just come out of UK winter. I don't know.
Like creamy ice cream, vanilla. Yeah.
And he looked at me with, well, what someone would look at you after you call their surfing vanilla.
After he just won his heat.
Yeah, just good surfed anything but vanilla. And but that was really cool. Like, it was quite, like, when Shannon asked me to come on and do that for a few days, I was like, oh yeah, that'll be fun. And then I was like, oh, I don't think I can interview Joel Tudor live, Shannon. She's like, don't worry, you won't have to. Like, I'll come down for his interviews or whatever. And then next thing, I'm interviewing Joel Tudor live, and he was so nice. But before my very first interview, I'm sure this is fine to say, the first interview I had to do live was with Eduard Del Ferro, and we're cramped in the tent out of the rain, and I was like just waiting for them to throw down to me, and I was like, oh, so like, how was it out there? And he's like, I saw a shark. And I was like,
So do you have an earpiece? Have you got feedback to the production?
Yeah, so that was before we went to air, and so then I was like, okay, I need to just ask him something that don't talk about what it was like out there. So when it went live, and like, he's obviously done that so many times, so he was never going to say anything like that on air, but I was like,
oh no, I don't know.
I'm not going to comment on Eduard Del Ferro, but I would say that he didn't throw me in the hot water on my very first interview anyway.
Last year I was commentating, and there's quite a lot of, like, last year was quite a lot of under 16. I think it was 3 or 4 under 16 ladies in the event, and we were calling them girls. Which is common to call ladies girls, and it's not meant, I don't think, by the majority of men as a chauvinistic term. It's just, it rolls off the tongue, I suppose, and we have to do better. But when someone tried to correct us, I looked at, I think it was Sam, and we were like, it's a heat of girls. They're like 15. We couldn't believe it, that, because someone had corrected them. I think they thought they were ladies, like in their 20s or something. The girls were surfing, the ladies the young ladies were surfing so well, like well and truly above their years. And we just were like, whoa, this is true. Is this the turning point where we're getting tongue-tied to call them girls or ladies, and people out there are thinking that they're full-grown women? So you've seen ladies surfing obviously catapult to a new level while you've been on the tour and observing it. How does that make you feel? You know, coming from WA, you obviously had some pioneering ladies, but the East Coast was always very dominant, you know, on the male side, but now it's almost the other way around at those key longboard spots in the world.
Yeah, I think like seeing this kind of cluster of, I hate to do this to you, Maddie, women. there's like, I guess there's like probably the most talked about group, the group out of Hawaii, out of Waikiki, but also in Australia, like Tully White and Emily Lethbridge are leading the way in this like massively exciting, like next very young, really, really good, really, really talented group of surfers. And it's just like the most, warms my heart. I love it. It's the best thing ever because
yeah, just like an old person.
Not that old yet.
Like I still want to beat them, but it's like, it's so exciting, and it's amazing to see that, like, the people spearheading like the progress of longboarding is not a group of men, and not a group of guys. It's a group of teenage girls that are like the most exciting, doing the like surfing with the most style, the most flair, and doing the most like technical kind of like really nice traditional longboarding is just like, it's the direction that I have always hoped that longboarding would head.
That's great. And yeah, I think everyone does get goosebumps, especially at the Festival of Surfing in previous years. I think that was not the WSL in particular, but there was a turning point there. John Brayson was there with me, and I've mentioned it a few times, where it was the under 15s actually, under 15s. And it was the most competitive and well-surfed heat from all competitors across all divisions. And it was relatively small, but the elegance and the choice of maneuvers, not all being nose rides, but just the placement of the footsteps, and you know how fanatical I am with that stuff. It was just so, that term being, you know, surfing mature beyond someone's years, it was taken to a new level. Because the women in the heat had no idea who Phil Edwards was, or Midget Farrelly, or Nat Young, nor do they at the time really cared. I think they were just having fun. And that was the scary thing. I
think like also on that point, like of not knowing who those historical surfers are is like, it's important to know surfing history. But I think like as women and as girls, like who do you look up to as a young girl, as a logger, like as a longboarder, that like, I think people like Cassie Meta, Jen Smith, and then like obviously the women in WA, Georgia and Claire and those, like they've kind of arrived in a time that they're not the first ones, but they have paved, like they have fought it out and laid the groundwork for this like really exciting generation to come through. And I think that is maybe almost more relevant history to people like Khalees Kelly-Opa'a, because she, like, I can look at I don't know, anyone from history. I can look at Phil Edwards and think that's great, but where are the women? Like, I don't know who to style my surfing off from the 60s in terms of that, like that masculine style. Like
and that's not necessarily because there wasn't the women out there doing the good stuff. It's just because they weren't getting filmed. They weren't getting documented because of the masculine. I mean, today, the female variety of board segment. So the number of women with a quiver, I reckon today is, I mean, I think inarguably as big as it's ever been and growing rapidly. And you've clearly pointed out as well, and I have watched a lot of competitions and seen the changes over the last 20 years, let's say, the women have by far and away accelerated their performance gains a lot more than the guys. And I think as women's logging, let's say, has become mainstream, where there's as many, and in some competitions more entrants in those divisions in the women's than there is in the men's now. It's the first time I've seen that. I think it's great that the young ladies coming through have a clear pathway. You've got people like Chloe Calmone. I mean, all surfers could aspire to be as good as her one day. You've got people like Kirra Molnar up there in Noosa, but well, I think social media as well, as people like yourself, Lucy, but social media now providing access for even someone with a very small surfing industry footprint can have a massive social media footprint. So a lot of people are following along in the footsteps of people without knowing anything about the history or having any inclination whatsoever to compete.
And
so
I think with the boards as well. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. What Nate mentioned before about like sort of like that passion for riding or where that comes from. This is a huge part of it, of like that of in all those times that all these women have been surfing over history, it's all erased because it was never written down, it was never documented. And so for me, it's like, it's so important to get these stories down so that we have something to look at. And we can, like, I was lucky enough to interview Chloe Come On recently, and she talked about this, like paddling out when you're the only woman out there, in case a young girl's in the car park and wants to paddle out and sees Chloe out there and paddles out because there's another woman out. And that is that same thing of like how important it is to get these stories down and to tell to like privileged voices that like that track our surfing history, because I guess you can never know what the future holds and who might need to look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree, but there's a huge factor there, and it isn't an excuse, but in the 60s, the early 60s especially, if you were in trouble, the people in the water that were going to help you were your fellow surfers. Watermen and waterwomen, people who were surfing, there wasn't just lifeguards on the beach that didn't surf. The lifeguards surfed, and they were, everyone was an active part of beach culture. And it was very, there was a huge segregation between, I guess, people who lived around the beach area and was a part of their local surf club, to the people that came on the weekend and just hung at the beach and sunbaked. It was like a huge divide. And unfortunately, the boards were very cumbersome and they got short really quickly, very quickly. And it was uncomfortable for small people like myself, people who are under 6 feet, to ride, those early longboards. They were thick, they were heavy, they were cumbersome. So a lot of those early pioneers, guys like Phil Edwards, Midget Farrelly, Nat Young, in terms of surfing style, not so much culture, they were almost feminine in the way that they did surf. They made it look really easy because the boards were so cumbersome. It was really easy to ride them, but hard to master. And I think in those earlier days, there was not a lot of women getting into it because it was uncomfortable. The boards were, as I said, easy to ride, but hard to master. And Nat Young was not a small guy. He's huge and with massive feet and massive limbs. And he made light work of such a big 10-foot board, where someone like, Bob McTavish, for example, was short and stocky, and he decided to make boards to suit his stature. I feel like if ladies were in the industry at the time and their hands were on equipment, they may have shaped boards that were a little more accustomed to their build. And that is what's happening now, and it's what's happened from the 90s onwards. But I think the equipment and the emerging of the industry, and obviously social values, there just wasn't a lot of ladies that were encouraged to be in the water in the first place. Not a lot of the ladies encouraged, if any, in the industry. Except, might I add, our first Australian surf company, apparel company, Platts, who are actually re-emerging. It was Kevin Platt's mother, and he was a surfer from DY. She started making all the board shorts for the boys, and that started off surf culture revolution in Australia. Australian-made trunks, made by a lady, or the mum, for the son, and they did some female clothing as well. And I've got the ads in some of my books here. Not much, but cool little button boardies and stuff. I'll try and dig them out. But there wouldn't have been I guess apart from bikini, there wouldn't have been much comfortable wear for a lady back then as well.
Yeah, and I think just also like the kind of the era of just women doing sport in general was probably pretty different at that time too. So that's still it's still slowly changing.
Well, you can't surf in the kitchen, can you?
Definitely not.
That's why we're not there. That's why we're not there.
There's weeks in the safety of internet land where you can't actually reach me to whack me in the head. So I just need to quickly make apologies, Lucy. Nathan, I don't know if you noticed, he was starting to look really unwell. I've just been chatting with him in a little side chat. He feels like he may have heat stroke or something, too many barrels in the pool. But he's made his apologies and he's just ducked off. So he was really stoked to have a chat with you. But yeah, he's just gone to have a little bit of a lay down. So apologies for that.
On the female idol, like I know Chloe's background really well. And it's funny, that style that the current crop of women who are leading that World Longboard Tour are actually really well considered to be the best longboarders in the world. It's sort of like undisputed. We're often in events, given the poor conditions that we've all had this last 2 years, there can be results that are a bit up and down and a few surprises here and there. But I think with the current state of longboarding, the ladies are so competitively driven. They are structuring heats really well. Their technique is incredible. And there is that, another thing I wanted to touch on, Lucy, and you've heard it from me before, there's that generational structure from style. Steph Gilmore, she's her own type of surfer, but she embodies elements of Michael Peterson, elements of Phil Edwards. When you look all the way back, it goes right through the eras. The way she holds her hands, similar to Tom Curran. And that is like dancing on the wave. And I feel like where surfing is at right now, in longboarding at least, and especially with Speed, Power and Flow with the WSL Shortboard Tour, it's some of the best, most elegant and eye-pleasing surfing that we've ever seen to date. And I think where we're at right now, and with these two lovely ladies that we have on the panel, it can only get better. And we need more of what we have here on the panel. And I would love to see, a dedicated World Longboard Tour, almost separate events based for the ladies, because I think there's certain waves that the girls just do it better than the guys.
That's so sexist. So sexist.
I think it's most waves, Maddie.
So obviously, Lucy, we can tell what you're passionate about. Can you just tell me a little bit, because you've just graduated, like finished studying. So what did you just finish studying, and where are you going now with what you're doing there?
Yeah, so thanks, Kirra. I just finished a 2-year Master of Peace and Conflict Studies. So pretty a divergent from surfing, I would say. But it's been amazing. I'm actually so sad that it's over because I've loved it so much. Of course, it's kind of, it's hugely about geopolitics and human rights, and I wrote my dissertation about women combatants and women on the front lines, and this is kind of I guess has been something that I've struggled to reconcile over the last few years of how do you surf and follow that surfing lifestyle when I have kind of developed this passion completely separate to do with like human stories and people affected by armed violence. So I've now hopefully figured out how to reconcile those. I just applied for a PhD to study surfing and social change. So the way that surf culture and the way that surfing is used as a social intervention in post-conflict and conflict-affected communities, what the impacts are, particularly on women and girls. So I've
got a really good friend in Israel. Go stay with her and surf with the girls in Israel. You'll have some great stories. But I think it's fantastic that you're able to combine elements of your interests as well as your pastimes and keep it all on track. And I guess that's what we're all aiming to do in our own little ways, is what we're all doing. But I love the idea of being able to call you Dr. Rusi.
Well, we'll see. I'll find out in 2 weeks. I'll find out if I get in. So, yeah. Otherwise, I have no idea what to do. So
You might have to get a real job.
I could never imagine you in a real job.
So of all the things you've seen and done, what I like to get something deeper out of each person we speak to. Is there anything that you wish someone had told you before you started off on your journey? That there's going to be some young kids who are watching this, or some grandparents who tag their grandkids in this to say, look, she's doing what you want to do. Is there something you wish someone had told you right at the very start that you know now that you wish you'd known then?
Even Nathan Weeksy. Nathan was super intrigued. You know, he's going to be watching this back and listening as well.
I would say the most important thing is listening. I think, like, there's so many things that I could say about, like, believe in yourself, and just go for it, and don't listen to what other people say, and don't be afraid, and all that kind of stuff, which is all really important. But I think, like, being able to listen enriches any experience that you can possibly have. So whether it's in a village in Zimbabwe, or I don't know, in the lineup somewhere, like, or doing interviews and writing stories, that you only know that those stories exist by being able to really pay attention to what somebody is saying, and try and understand, and like really, really listen to them. I think that has probably been the most valuable tool that I've acquired over the years, and it still continues to be the most the most interesting and the funnest, and the kind of, I'm glad I know that now.
You've changed. That's not the same Lucy Small that came crashing onto the scene. Listening was not a thing. But is there anyone you've modelled your career on? Is there, like, apart from John Brazen, of course, everyone wants to be like John Brazen when they grow up. But is there a particular writer that you've always idolised, that whether it's with surfing or outside the surfing world? Is there a style or a type of content that you aspire to be as good as such?
When I was younger, I always loved Sean Doherty. Obviously, he's such an amazing writer, and he's got such a great pace to the way he writes, and able to blend surfing and social issues and environment and everything together so beautifully. I always have loved his writing within surfing, but otherwise, I don't really know. There's a couple. I don't know off the top of my head. I think is it James Brickwood? He's a California guy that he's done some pretty amazing. I think he's written a few surf biographies, and
Jamie Brisick.
Brisick, that's the name. Yeah. Now I'm kind of following his work a lot closer, and I really enjoy the way that he is able to tackle kind of important and complex ideas, but also blend it with like kind of surfing and things around that. Yeah. But obviously JB as well. he's probably been the biggest influence and the biggest champion of my work since the very start of anything, and always encourages me to write what I believe and write true to what.
And JB's eyes always light up when he talks about you as well, Lucy, which is great. And he's obviously quite. He made quite a clear decision early on in the process with Pacific Longboarder magazine to have a strong female presence in the magazine with some substance, not just some pictures of some bums, which is what surf mags used to be. So I know I can speak on behalf of, there's quite a few West Aussies watching, Gary McCormick and a few of the crew, and they're all very proud of you, Lucy. It's you were the, I hope I don't take it the wrong way. You know me, you're like the annoying yappy grommet there for a little while, and look at you now.
I'm still really annoying, don't worry.
All my favourite people are Lucy, Obviously they wouldn't get along with me if they
just were very entertaining at times.
What I really am impressed by is the amount of dirt that we've all got on you, and no one's brought any of it up, so that's great.
Quick, end the show now for us.
I think that I've got just enough leverage, though.
Yeah, well, that's it. You can plaster us all over the broadsheets and bring us all down.
My mum's watching.
Don't say it.
Hi, Mum.
All good.
Lucy, just to bring this back out of the gutter, who are your favourite? Not that anyone else but Weeksy brought it in. Who are your favourite surfers at the moment, and why?
Am I allowed to say Tully?
Yeah.
Tully White's my favourite surfer. She's so good. She's the best. She's completely, her style is so refined. She's so robust. She can surf completely poised and in any conditions, on any board. She's also really cares about, she's passionate about the environment. She's really, really kind. She's really awesome. And so it's really nice to have my favourite surfer to be someone close to home.
You get to surf with Tully much?
Not really, not that much. A few times, but yeah, she's around.
Well, I can see a few similarities between both of your styles as well. I think you're pretty solid across the board with your technique. And is there any clips or anything out there that anyone wants to follow you? What's your social media tag that people can follow your progress?
You can find my Instagram as Saltwater Pilgrim. Probably not that much surfing on there these days, but
But you'll be very knowledgeable after following.
And sorry, Gary McCormick, obviously, he's heard his name mentioned, Lucy, but he's said here, you need to contact me regarding some information about women in surfing in WA, as well as an amazing story about the pastor's daughter from Denmark in the 60s.
yeah, okay, interesting.
Another job offer.
No, it's just more work. It's just more work. So look, obviously COVID's thrown a massive spanner in your works because obviously your whole life revolves around travelling the world, which you can't do right now. So it's fantastic to see you smiling and that sparkle in your eyes. It's like, has it forced you to think of new things to do? I'm just doing to Kirra what everyone does to me every week and asking you another question. Now it's time to wrap it up.
Yes. At least you know
I
it.
would say that at the start of 2020, I had a lot of plans. Kirra and I both had a lot of travel plans that we haven't been able to capitalize on. But 2020 has still been epic. We went and surfed the wave pool right before. We've been to urban surf.
Everyone's been to urban surf except me and me.
I went to Algeria right at the last minute. I flew into the country the day before lockdown started. That was awesome. I was in Byron at that time. I moved back down to Sydney, and I guess it has kind of I'm living further away from the beach than I've ever lived, and which has been different. But it has really. I feel like I've developed creatively a lot more. I've been able to focus on some kind of different things, and it's actually I'm ready to go.
Yes.
Your
We're meant to
passport's
be
going.
sipping margaritas in Mexico.
Yeah, we should be drinking mugs in Mexico, but also would love to get back over to WA and see my family. That would be a nice a luxury.
You don't want your disease carrier, stay where you are.
So before
Hey,
we wrap it up, Luce,
one last request, Kirra. The camera keeps jumping to you when we hear that yapping noise. I want you to show everyone watching.
I don't know, he's a little bit.
Come on, tell Mrs. K to bring her on in.
Hold on, I'll organise something. Mum, do you want to bring Maui?
Love that barrel shot. How good's that barrel shot?
I know, I was so jealous. So
I
jealous.
wish it was like that. That was like that one time it was pumping. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Oh.
I hope you didn't hear him barking. In case there's a little bit of noise, this is the issue.
Ah.
Go mad in there. I'm trying to keep him quiet.
Oh, look at him. Look at those little cheeks.
How old is he?
He's 8.5 weeks.
Lovely.
Pretty young.
Maui.
Maui.
That's a cute name.
Cute.
Look at his
Maui.
little face.
She was singing just a minute ago.
Oh, good. Well, I guess I better wrap it up somehow. Luce, is there anything else you'd like to say to your mum if she's watching?
Thanks for watching, Mum. I know that you don't even surf and you're still watching. even my mum is a Khalees Cleopatra fan.
Everyone's a Khalees. Anyone who was in Noosa would have to be a Khalees Cleopatra fan, huh? Or champion.
Very
So
true.
we're in Brady Bunch mode now, so everyone can see all of us at the same time.
Awesome, guys. There is one thing before we finish. The Noosa World Surfing Reserve, if you're in Noosa at all, is holding a Christmas ball. And all proceeds will go towards protecting the Noosa World Surfing Reserve and the environment and surfing culture. So if you would like to buy a ticket on the 12th of December, you can access it through www.noosaworldsurfingreserve.com and buy one on there. And apart from that, thank you so much for Lucy for joining us and everybody.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, guys.
I've got a special message I forgot to talk about. So
go.
This is from Paul White up at Agnes Water. The Agnes Water Longboard Classic, 16th and 17th of March 2021. Pro logger entries are opening. First prize will receive $750 for both men and women. And this year, Kirra's not going to bring the winner in her car with her.
Oh, yeah.
No, Lucy, if I drive you up, you can't win.
Keep those Germans out of there.
So 16th, 17th of March, the pro logger division's on. $750 for both the men and the women's divisions. That's great news.
And on my local front, Lucy, if you're still around the beginning of December, my club, the Reef Riders at Longreef, we have a Old Mal event on the 5th of December. We'll be abiding by whatever COVID restrictions decide to pop up at that stage. But it'll be Old Mal and V-bottom. So it'll be those boards made between, pre-1968 and a couple of different divisions there, mid-lengths and V-bottoms and Old Mals and logs. So if you're in Sydney, get in touch via Instagram, our Reef Riders Instagram, or hit me up on my Instagram at the Waxhead.
Surfing Victoria's events are back on this weekend as well. So that's a big U from Nathan Riverland. So Nath, get well, mate. Just go make sure you drink lots of water, some coconut water or something. Awesome to see you, Luce. So stoked to have you on, and I'm sure our guests will have, our viewers will have many questions for you. Is it okay if people drop some questions on the feed on Facey and get some answers off you?
Yeah, definitely, of course.
Unreal.
Awesome.
Now, Kirra, this is where you're supposed to ask Sean what's on next week.
Sean, what's on next week?
Sean's unfortunately not able to answer, Kirra, because Sean's on his way to Agnes Water for a wedding. And so one of his, one of his best helpers from the Australian Longboard Open is getting married up at Agnes, so he's not here this week. Next week, we may have Taylor Jensen. We've got our man Jack Entwistle on the money, or on the hunt there. But if not, I was actually thinking, and Lucy, you brought her up earlier on, I was thinking it might be good to get Jade Foster on to talk about the underwater breathing stuff.
Yeah, cool.
And Jada, obviously being in WA, it's not quite so hard to organise this time of the day. But so it's going to be a great show regardless. And I'll
tune in for a surprise guest, basically. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much, Luce, Maddie, Weeksy. That's episode 26 of Oz Longboarding. Over and out.
Great job, Kirra. Thanks, Lucy. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
I never talk